So Ryan, the closer over more, closer versus more mantra that we have in the Whale Club that we've learned from Nick and Dan, there's nothing new about this, right? It's not like this is a fairly intuitive concept, but we seem to violate this in a lot of ways in our life. And tell me a little bit about how you've applied this concept of closer versus more in your business specifically.
Yeah, so I agree that it is relatively intuitive, but I think it's something that I personally ignore all the time, right? So the closer versus more has been just extremely helpful for me in the past couple of months, trying to really target what it is that I'm driving towards and set achievable goals that will absolutely change over time, right? But they change over time based on where you are in your business, where you are in your life, and what you're trying to achieve, right? So the I think the biggest takeaway for me was setting achievable micro step goals that you can kind of get to a main goal over time, but really driving towards that closer to whatever it is that you want, right? It could be business, personal, whatever that looks like, but the more is what I used to get trapped up in all the time, and not just more because you want more money, you want more houses, you want a better business, a bigger business, but you also can get caught up in that rat race of the comparative analysis with your peers, right? And I think that the closer concept takes all that out of there, right? So now you have something that you are personally driving towards, and you are trying to achieve your goals. And if those goals align with somebody else's goals, that's great. It can be a collaborative effort, but for me, it took a lot of the comparison out of it, right? So different people are driving towards different things, and hopefully they're getting closer to their goals as well. But I really appreciate the concept of not just desiring more with no drive in a certain direction, right? And that's really what I took out of it for my personal life, for my business life, and really trying to apply to almost every aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm. We see this all the time we violate this in business, but we might also be violating this in our investments. And one of the ways we talk about that is through the lens of the solvable problem. So we use what's called the solvable problem to turn our goals into a math equation. And it took me a while to realize how that played in with closer over more. And really what I think of it as a way to remove risk. So for example, if we said, hey, I want to get to this, here's my solvable problem, here's my timeline. And in order to hit that goal, I need a 30% annualized return for the next, let's say 10 years, something like that, right? You work out your numbers and you says, hey, I need 30%. Well, where I might have violated that in the past is by chasing after opportunities that have higher percentage because it's a higher upside. And then it's like, yeah, but you're taking on more risk than you need. We've already established the goal and the timeline it's going to take there. What we want to do is we want to take as least amount of risk as possible. But what do we as humans do? We chase the higher return. We're like, but that one has a higher return. I can get there faster with this.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think closer versus more is a fantastic concept, but what you just touched on is the reliability, right? So I know there's a lot of math out there that 10% and compared to the 90%, but if you're consistently hedging your bets on the reliable outcome that you can get 9 times out of 10, and that's going to get you closer to where you're going, it almost, for me, takes away the risky side of things, right? Unless you're playing with house money or whatever that looks like. But if there's something that I'm driving towards, then reliability becomes a lot more important. Whereas if I just want more of something, then that risk, it kind of speaks to you a little bit more. And that's kind of, I think they go hand in hand and twofold, but that's what I've learned over the past couple of months, is that you're driving towards something, and the best way to get there is in a sometimes slow but definitely reliable fashion that you can recreate those results over and over and over again.
Yeah, I just call it deliberate, right? Like we want to take
Yeah.
deliberate actions that get us closer to our goal. Um, and yeah, so this is fantastic. I mean, I love that principle because it's something I think about on a daily basis, right? Like you talked about competition as type A real estate investors, there's always a shiny object of, ooh, but that guy's doing more deals. How do I do
Yeah.
more deals? Um, so I appreciate that perspective. Anything else you want to add on the closer more?
Not so much. I mean, I do see learning that principle recently is it's a slow trickle effect, and I've definitely applied it into business almost immediately, right? By setting those goals and working towards achieving those. But I can start to see it, leaching into my personal life, which is again something that I probably wasn't doing enough of, is setting deliberate personal goals, be it for myself, for relationships or whatever, but taking deliberate action towards becoming a better person, more educated, a better spouse, or whatever that looks like. But taking those business acumens and applying to personal life is I'm already seeing some very positive results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good to hear. Well, as you were talking, I sort of thought of, like the only way to know whether chasing more is like an endless loop. Like you can always chase more time with your, more knowledge, more money, more this, more that. The only way to know when you've gotten the most is to get there and lose and to blow
Yeah.
up, right? Like you only know your boundaries until you push too far and you go over
Right.
the edge, right? And so like that's why that's such a bad strategy. You can always chase more risk, more return, more
Yeah.
insert whatever it is, right? And so this is why it's so imperative to have clarity on what it is that you really want, right? Is if your goal, we use this example all the time, like if your goal is to spend more time with your family, but you're taking to, your personal, that's your goal ultimately, right? Is to spend more time with your family. But everything indicates on the business side that you're making decisions that pull you away from
Right.
time with your family. There's a disconnect there. And it's just, another example of where we make decisions that actually get us further away from the things that we say that we want.
I also think there's something very fulfilling about setting a goal, no matter how large or small, and achieving it, right?
Yeah.
So something that's measurable that you can, write about, look back on in 90 days and say, oh, well, I'm well surpassed that. And I'm glad that I have time to reflect on it right now. And that's a great feeling. Let's move on to the next one. Or, it might take you 2 years to get somewhere. And then when you really get there, you get that feeling of fulfillment, achievement. And if you're not able to measure something, there's no real way to kind of get that. And that's another just a great thing about this, is that if you can set it, measure it, achieve it, I think there's a lot of positive that comes out of that.
Yeah. And we know that things change, right? Like what I wanted 3 years ago is different than what I want today. It's fairly reasonable to assume that 3 years from now, what I want is going to be different. So it's not like saying you can't change your mind. All it's saying is that the actions you're taking on a daily, weekly, monthly basis should be getting you closer to the things that you say you want. Now, if that changes, then we may need to reevaluate. The way you do that is through an operating system. You have to have a way to make decisions. So this is just the power of what Nick and Dan have taught us, and of stuff we're learning in the Whale Club. So no, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thanks.
So if you guys want to learn more about this, check out our YouTube channel. We're going to be having these discussions every single week with different investors. So, Ryan, we're also excited about the white paper. So I'm sure that's going to be a major hit when it comes out. So if you guys want to see what Ryan's working on, go check out blockchainwhales.com.